We're talking about stewarding the prophetic, and in this video I want to talk about identity formation. So why does God sometimes give a prophetic word to us that seems so far into the future that we don't know necessarily what to do with that word? Uh, so most people will just respond by just waiting for something to happen, and they are left disillusioned that that maybe was not from God. So we can actually accelerate that word over our lives if we allow God to shape us within our identity. I'm not talking about self-fulfillment of prophecy, but there is a working out from outside in stewarding that word that needs to happen inside of us, that we can form part of that. So Jesus in Luke 4, he gets up and he reads Isaiah 61. And he reads it, and then he ends with this in verse 21. Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. So he is saying, in that moment, it's done. He's not started a single thing in his ministry, and he said it's finished. What was he referring to? He was talking about, I am this in my heart before the outward working of that. So there's an inward working that needs to happen in terms of our identity formation before we'll walk in it. Why is that? Because we act out of who we are. So prophecy is first what you become in your heart before you'll actually walk in it. So we need to actually go into the future, and we need to clothe ourselves with that prophetic word and the characteristics of that prophetic word in our hearts before we will see the outward working on it. So prophecy and destiny is very much linked with identity, but also favor, and wrapping our heads around the understanding that God spoke to us, this is my dream for you. So his favor is already on that word, so there is a permission for us to actually take hold of that. It's not arrogance to clothe ourselves and wrap ourselves around the characteristics associated with that prophetic word. It's often locked up in a name. We see in Genesis 17, God is changing Abraham's name, or Abram to Abraham, which was basically exalted father to father of many nations, because that was his calling. And I think like 15 verses or 10 verses later, God is speaking to Sarah, and he changes her name too to princess, because she will birth kings. In Genesis 32, just a few chapters on, we see Jacob wrestling with the angel and God changing his name to Israel. And it's changed from heel catcher or deceiver to prince of God or struggle with God, because that was also capturing some part of his identity. Peter in Matthew, it talks about the same thing. Jesus referred to him as a rock, as a metaphor of a foundation on top of which he wanted to build his church. So identity is really vital when it comes to these things in the prophetic. Now, I know that it can be very daunting to step out and actually take hold of something that you are not yet in your heart. And it often requires us to wrestle and fight through some internal giants that we might face inside of us. So that is the breakthrough you cannot outsource to someone else. It's something that we need to wrestle with God in order to allow that to take shape in our hearts. It's an internal change that needs to happen before the external walking out of that word becomes true. Now, this is not words that talks about encouragement, that you just receive God's love and stuff like that. This is talking about calling, and that's why it often requires a lot more birthing that's happening inside of us. So, I had a situation where someone gave me a prophetic word about teaching. At that time, I was so afraid to speak in front of people. And I took hold of that word. I started working out teachings. No one invited me. But I literally would walk in the fields with the only audience that I had were basically trees. So I would teach to the trees. And I cover or clothe myself with that prophetic word. I start stepping out in alignment with what the Lord has said, contrary to my circumstances. And then only the audiences or people started inviting me. So asking the right questions, that's something that's really vital when it comes to identity formation. What does this word mean? And what are the implications of my life? What is my identity supposed to look like to be in alignment with this word? What characteristics do I need to clothe myself with, and which views of myself do I need to shake off? How can I see myself in a different way? What part of this word do I find hard to believe, and how can I gather faith around those areas of my life? What do I need to start becoming in my mind and in my heart? What actions are required of me in the present? What can I pray now to aid this process? And then what is the Lord using to advance me in my current situations? Who in my life is the Jonathans that actually will encourage me, and who are the souls that will purify me? So bless you guys, just in this very vital stage of just stewarding the prophetic and allowing God to take shape, or the identity of that word to take shape inside of us.